Welcome to the inaugural episode of Sips and Screams. We're twin sister horror fanatics, I would say. Sip cocktails and discuss some of our favorites in the genre. We are starting with a real gem of a horror movie, 1408 from 2007. I'm Ashley, and joining me today is my twin sister, Allie. Hey, Allie.
Hey, Ash.
All right, so before we get started and really, dig into 1408, I think it's time to have our first cocktail of the night.
It certainly is.
So what are we having today?
We are making our version of a mint julep. Kentucky Derby was a couple of weeks ago, so it's timely. It has some whiskey, some mint, some lime in it, some simple syrup, and then we're gonna change it up a little bit, and we're gonna add some soda water instead of regular water, just to jazz it up a bit.
So a whiskey mojito, perhaps.
Basically, I think so.
I hate whiskey. I know you hate whiskey. Why are we drinking whiskey tonight?
Yeah. I never drink whiskey, and I know you don't either.
I do not.
It's certainly a center of 1408 of the movie, and so we're inspired by that.
So we are drinking whiskey in honor of our good friend Mike Enslin. He loves his whiskey. He loves his whiskey, and he loves his Hawaiian shirts. We don't know which one he loves more, but we are dressed for the occasion, and we are going to try to drink whiskey in honor of him. Okay. Do you have your cocktail shaker?
I do.
Okay, we're pre-prepared here. Okay, let's get those poured.
All right, let's water that down with a little bit of soda.
So you have Topo and I have Seagram's, so I feel like yours is going to be better. I'm like scared to have a drink.
Me too. Moment of truth, though.
I really prefer wine, but it's Friday night.
Yeah, that's a good face.
That's a good face. Come on out. This is for 1408. This is for Mike.
I'll do it for Mike. I'll do it for Stephen King.
He had to survive 1408. You can drink this. Okay, we can survive this. Okay, let's go. It's decent.
Yeah, it's not bad. You certainly get that whiskey aftertaste.
You do get the whiskey. Mine's pretty good on the mint.
I didn't add much simple syrup to mine, but don't like sweet drinks.
Okay, so we're through with killer cocktails. We have our drink. We're ready to go. Are you ready?
I am ready.
So why don't you give us a synopsis of the movie?
Yeah, happy to. So as we discussed earlier, our main character, Mike Enslin, played by the obviously amazing John Cusack. And so now this movie, I think one of our favorites because it's, of course, a Stephen King adaptation from a short story. So it's really about this Mike Enslin character. He's a writer. He's incredibly cynical. Writes a host of novels on haunted areas. And his latest one is 10 Haunted Hotels. And so that's really the premise. And so, again, he's a cynic. He gets this mysterious postcard in the mail telling him not to enter the Dolphin Hotel in New York City, room 1408. So naturally, what does he do? He goes. He flies to New York and he goes to the Dolphin Hotel. And that's where he meets Mr. Olin. Again, there's not a lot of characters in the movie, but another main character played by Samuel L. Jackson, and who really tries to prevent him from going into the room. But again, Mike doesn't believe him. He remains a cynic. He finally gets in the room and a bunch of crazy stuff happens.
A lot of crazy stuff.
A lot of supernatural phenomenon. He thinks he's going crazy. So ultimately he's fighting the demons in the room, the demons in his head. And eventually, lucky for Mike, he is able to beat those demons and get out of that room in one way or another.
And you know what? We will talk about a challenge to that because there were some other outcomes for Mike, depending on when you watched the movie. So 1408, and actually when we rewatched it, when we were preparing to have this video podcast, one of the things I actually it didn't even clock in for me that 1408 adds up to 13. Like I didn't even, and that's so obvious. And I'm like, oh yeah, it adds up to 13. And then the fact that, most hotels don't have a 13th floor because of some superstition. So I thought that was kind of clever. And again, not something I caught on the first viewing. So I thought that was cool. All right. How are you doing? How's your whiskey?
Oh, You know what? It's going down good.
I can't even taste the whiskey.
Yeah, it's the lime, the mint, the soda water. It's really, it's mulling it. Yeah. Are we whiskey people now? Maybe
We might be. I don't know.
by the end of this podcast, perhaps.
You mentioned that 1408 is based on a Stephen King short story. Did you read the short story?
I did read the short story. Did I read it in 2007? Absolutely not. Did I read it in preparation for this podcast? Yes, I did.
I did not read it. I read the Wikipedia version. So I got the Cliff Notes of the story. But there were some liberties taken with the movie. Was it the same? I mean, you read the OG actual story. So I know there were some differences too.
Yes. Many liberties. Obviously, the main characters remain the same. We have our Mike Enslin. We have our Mr. Olin, the Samuel L. Jackson character. But yes, I mean, his entire backstory was fabricated for the movie. What happens in the room is different. And again, I think it's a little different when it's written on paper and what they're trying to do for visual effects.
And they had to fill, 2 hours. So I think they had to throw in some extra scares and kind of give that backstory so you could root for him. But yeah, we'll definitely talk about that later when we get more into some of the categories and dig a little deeper into the movie. So as always, I mean, this is our first episode, but this is something that we'll always kind of talk about our personal experiences and when we first saw the movie. So it was 2007. Take me back. Where were you when you first saw this movie? Because we usually see horror movies together, but we do not live in the same state. So where were you when you watched this movie?
Yeah. So summer 2007, I think it came out in June. I'm not sure if I saw it opening weekend or not. Probably.
Knowing me. First in line.
First in line. And this was before you could reserve seats. You had to go wait in line to get that good seat. I'm pretty sure. So I know I was living in Boston. Pretty sure I went on a date for this movie.
Kind of a first date?
I don't think it was a first date. Don't quote me on that, even though we're recording this. But it certainly was a date. Did he enjoy it as much as me? I don't think so.
No, it was a first and last date, perhaps.
It could have been. Yeah, we may not have made it past that one. But again, I remember just being enthralled and loving every second of it. Especially at that time, we hadn't had a good horror movie in a while. What about you?
I also saw it in the theater, and I remember it was pretty packed. I actually don't find it as scary when you watch it with a bunch of people in the theater, because everyone's kind of reacting, and I don't know. I prefer watching it more like at home in like a dark room by yourself. I find that more scary, but it was really good. And even though I was in the large room, I remember it really stuck with me. And I remember walking home. I was in Toronto, walking home and just kind of, feeling kind of scared, I guess, and just kind of going home and maybe sleeping with the lights on. And then it kind of ruined hotels. I mean, didn't ruin them because I love all that scary stuff, but it always made me take pause in hotels, which I kind of love. Anyone that's into horror kind of loves that feeling. But this was just a great movie. Was really excited to see it on the big screen, and then I watched it at home as well when it came out. And we'll talk about that later. But I had two different experiences because they didn't end the same way. So
yeah.
Okay, so I'm workshopping the Screamometer. What do you think?
Okay. I like it. I like it. I think we need to set a range. We need to discuss, what the high end of that looks like, what the low end of that looks like.
Maybe we rate it based on screams or sips. 10 sips is the scariest thing you've ever seen. 1 sip is like meh, like you're okay. Like it could have been a comedy,
Yeah.
So
I like it.
From 1 to 10, 1 being not scary at all, 10 being like holy beep. Yeah, this is scary. How many sips would you give it, or screams?
And one follow-up question with that: are we talking about the first time we saw it? Are we talking about on rewatch? Because I think you get a different experience.
I think overall, we're talking about our favorite horror movies in the genre. Where does this one land for you?
In terms of scares, I'm gonna put this at 5. A 5 scares. Yes.
Surprised by that. I'm very surprised by that.
You put it higher?
I even in the rewatch, I remember being pretty terrified watching it in the theater and even at home in 2007. But rewatching it, I thought it was eerie. I thought it was really eerie. Psychological horror, not gory. I hate those really gory ones. I don't really find that scary. But in terms of, the body of horror movies, I would give this an 8. I thought it's genuinely like a really, really good one. And I always recommend it to people because it's some scary stuff and it just sticks with you.
Yeah, I certainly agree that there's some parts. I'd say maybe 5 big scares, and they're not the typical jump scares either, right? I mean, again, I think they play a lot with sound. They play a lot with atmosphere in this movie that a lot of movies don't do. Probably the Stephen King factor there. But yeah, it's hard. Putting myself back in 2007, I think I would have given it a higher rating upon rewatch. I love the movie. Is it scary? I'd say it's middle of the road.
Middle of the road. Okay.
Yeah,
well, I'm excited to hear about your kind of Roman Empire of horror movies and if it stands the test of time. Because, Stephen King for me, and I think you agree, we've seen this movie together many times. I think, The Shining is one of the scariest movies ever.
Oh, yes.
In that every time I watch it, I still find it really, really eerie. But I do think this one has stood the test of time. Okay, so our next segment, I'm calling this Sip and Tell. We're going to sip our cocktails and we're going to talk about our personal experiences related to the content of 1408. So what's the scariest hotel you've ever stayed at? And do you have any kind of creepy 1408-esque stories to share?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, obviously, when you're watching it and putting your own personalization on it. I think the scariest hotel I've stayed at was maybe the Sir Francis Drake Hotel in San Francisco.
Yes.
We're actually there. We stayed in a separate, we were there when you were there too.
We were the separate floors.
Separate floors, but that one is apparently haunted. Did I search, the various floors to see that? Yeah. Did I see any ghosts? No. But it was very creepy. I will say the lobby of that hotel kind of reminded me of the Dolphin, actually. Yeah. Kind of that old antiqueness to it. So that's maybe the scariest.
Yeah, it was pretty grand. I think the scariest thing about that hotel was how small the rooms were. The fact that you would open the bathroom door and basically hit the bed. You didn't mention this in the synopsis, but this was the whole story of 1408 was actually based on a true story. I mean, that's what they say in the late 1800s. And it was about this young woman who went to the Del Coronado Hotel in San Diego. And I guess she went there and she said that she was going to be meeting a male companion. And then 5 days later, they found her on the stairs and she was dead. And I guess it was like the stairs going out to the beach. So after that, there was housekeeping staff and they were complaining about just kind of some paranormal events. So things were falling off shelves on their own. They were hearing footsteps and voices and things like that. So that's actually where I guess Stephen King read about that and as kind of historical context, and then came up with the idea for 1408. But a little bit of trivia here. I actually stayed at the Del Coronado. I stayed at that hotel. You know this. Yeah.
I remember. Any weird things? Did you see any ghosts? Any paranormal activity?
So it is similar to the Sir Francis Drake in San Francisco. It is this very grand hotel, but it's huge and it's on the beach. So you kind of walk in and you kind of get that feel. But I was so disappointed because they put me in the new part. They did all this new construction and I was in the new part. So it was basically just a nice new resort. I wasn't in the original part. But I was there for a work event and some people that were there with me did say that they saw things. But it was really polite things, like their bed was made up. Or they
kind
had
of like 1408.
Yeah. Yes, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. I didn't think about that.
And you were probably one of the only people who was disappointed to be in the new portion of the hotel.
I think I was the only person.
Ever since that movie, right? You always look at the hotel room number. Just 2 months ago, I actually stayed in room 1408.
I know.
In Atlanta.
Wow.
At the Signia, the Hilton, Signia by Hilton Hotel. And I could not have been more excited when I got to my room and saw that.
So when they gave you your key and you saw it was 1408, did you give the clerk a knowing glance or did he or she give you one? What was that exchange like? Did they give you a smirk? Because I'm sure they know of the movie.
I wish I could recall that they did. I do not remember any such smirk or knowing glance. No. I looked at that. I immediately saw it. I was excited. No one else seemed to be.
And it was a magnet card. It wasn't the heavy key.
No,
they should lean into that. That would lead into that.
That'd be great. I agree. That would have been absolutely incredible. I would have sought that out.
Yeah.
No, magnetic key, regular hotel room.
Darn.
Yeah. So what happened to you? Like you were primed going in there. How was the night? How was the experience? I was, pretty normal, uneventful. I will say my last night there, I'm coming home at late. Probably it's around midnight. I come in the room, I'm getting ready for bed, and I hear some faint music. And again, it was sort of this old timey music. It, it wasn't anything I'd heard before, and it was at a really, really. Was it this? Was it this? It wasn't. I don't think it was that. There were no lyrics to it. If it had been that, I think I would have been excited. Yeah. Just kind of sounded like something. You would have called me. I definitely would have called you. Yeah. I definitely would have called you. Want to have experienced that with you. Yeah. It went on for a while. I laid in bed and there was this faint music. Yeah. Was there someone staying in the room next door? Do you know? I don't know. I don't. Was it a woman with a baby? Was there a baby carriage? And a baby carriage with a creepy old baby carriage, mind you, with like a white covering. Yeah. I can't say that I saw anyone like that. I'd like to think and hope that there was someone like that in the room next door. Yeah. I think we'll pretend that there was. Yeah, we can pretend that there was. Yeah. So it's like bingo, like 1408 bingo. Like you actually stayed in a 1408. I haven't yet, but when I do, I'll text you right away. I'm really excited about it. And like, can you just request it? I'm sure we could. I want 1408. We should try it. We should definitely try it. So where I know the Dolphin doesn't exist, the hotel in New York, but where did they film it? What was the hotel? Do you know the name of the hotel? Yeah, I think it was the Roosevelt Hotel in New York. Yeah, that sounds right. So we should just go, and I'm sure everybody requests to stay in 1408. And again, they should also lean into that. That would be awesome. I'm down. I want the heavy key. Yeah, I want the crooked door. I want all of that. How's the whiskey? I feel like you're. Oh, I have a taller glass. You have a taller glass. I feel like I did not put as much Topo Chico in mine. I'll add a little more. I'm telling you, like the more I drink, I can't even really taste the whiskey, and I like it better than like tequila. So it's good. You do. Bold statement. Yeah, I'm not sure anything can surpass tequila for me, but I am enjoying it. I like tequila sometimes, but it doesn't love me back. So, it's just, it's never a good day after. So we'll see how I am tomorrow after this. Yeah. Let's compare tomorrow once you experience it. We'll see how we are on the second one. All right. So this is my favorite segment. We're going to talk about what were the scariest parts of the movie. And I know you have your favorites. I have mine. Really, what scared you? There were many, I think, in this movie. But what were your favorite scary parts? Yeah. Number one, the alarm clock. Yes. That was just jolting and jarring. He even says it in the movie, right? That it's creepy. Yeah. Bringing it back again. There it is, that sound. The blaring, the alarm clock turning on, that sound, that Carpenter song blaring. Is creepy, right? And I think that they used it a lot. But that first time when he's head out the window and he hears it, incredible. Yeah, so good. And then, little did the Carpenters know that their song was going to be just used in. I don't think this is even the only horror movie where it's used, but it's just creepy. It's just a creepy sounding song, and they kind of put that effect on it, where it kind of like fades off and kind of gets distorted. And I thought that was really scary. I also thought it was really scary when it went to the countdown. Now it's like 60 minutes. Oh, yes. Another thing that was not in the book. No, the phone ringing. That was that voice, like the creepy attendant downstairs, and like, Mr. Ensign, would you like to check out now? That was a horrible impression. Actually, that's not it. Well, yeah, I feel like you gave her an accent. I did. I gave her an accent. She was very happy. That happy hotel. Would you like to check out? Yeah, I can't. Yeah, that's better. Except I kind of made her creepy. She was definitely happy, but in a creepy happy. She was like a really creepy, too happy, like telemarketing type of way. Yes. So for me, I'm like claustrophobic. Right. I have a little bit of that. So when he was outside walking on the ledge, and then there's no window anymore, and then he goes in. And he goes and looks at the map, and it's like just the room. Like you're here, but there's nothing else around it. I thought that was so scary. And I think one of the scariest things about this movie is just the isolation of it. Like there's one character for most of the movie.
And I find those movies the scariest because there's nothing to like bounce the scary energy off of. And I've talked to you about this. Like I love The Woman in Black, the one with Daniel Radcliffe, because it's just him in this haunted house. So if you don't have other characters, there's really like no opportunity for comedic relief, and you're just like in it with them. So I thought that was like really scary, and I would just like freak out if I was alone in a room and with no escape. So I thought that was pretty scary too. What else?
No, terrifying. Like Vivarium. Again, maybe we'll review that one at some point. But that isolation
is that a horror movie? It's like a thriller kind of.
Maybe more of a thriller. But
maybe we'll branch out.
Damn, is it unsettling?
It is. So I mean, I'm surprised you didn't mention like the scariest, most unnerving part. Do you know the part I'm thinking of?
The scariest, most unnerving
What was like the scariest part?
Oh,
because they kind of like they kind of like throw you for a loop when he escapes the room, right? He's kind of having this like normal life.
Yeah, and I think I would call that not best scare, but I have listed as the best part of the movie for me.
But I just thought that was brilliant, and just it like made my stomach flip. I thought it was so good.
Literally, the words I have written down are brilliant for that part.
Brilliant.
So,
okay.
You know what? We're on. Why
don't we get into it then? Since we're here,
let's get into it. Let's get into it. Yeah.
So the part that I think we're both speaking of is when he escapes and he's like back surfing, and then he ends up back at the post office again, and he's mailing. Actually, he goes and writes 1408. He just writes He writes the whole thing in like one sitting, and then he goes to mail it at the post office to his editor back in New York. And then what happens, Al?
He's going to mail it back, and he recognizes some of the people there as workers at the Dolphin Hotel. So, and they start
creepy.
Yes, it's so creepy. And they start with their hammers or sledgehammers or whatever, tearing down the walls. And then the water comes in, and he's back in 1408. Yeah. He never got out.
And he's like, I got out. I was out. Which was a little bit of overacting, I think. But
there was some of that. But I, to be fair, I think he had to, right? Yeah. That is the only kind of character in it.
Another scene that I thought was scary was when he goes in the, I don't know what that was, the fridge, like the old folks' home, whatever that was, where his father was in there.
It was a bathroom, right?
It was a bath. Yeah, it was his bathroom, but it turned into something.
It looked tub, I think.
It looked like the one from Saw. Like it looked like the room from Saw.
It did look like the room from Saw.
Was it the same set? When did Saw come out?
After that, I believe.
Because his father, who is just kind of like he's like decrepit and like not saying nice things to his son, but he says that quote.
Yes.
And it was it? So he says something, it was just like horrible quote, but it makes you think. He says, "As you are, I was. As I am, you will be." Right? And it looks like he was in a hospital. I don't know. But again, they didn't really get along, and he did not look in a good kind of state. But clearly like some father-son things going on there. But I think his father was like loner, and, Mike was also kind of a loner and estranged from his family. So just kind of saying, this is your fate if you keep going the way you are. But I thought that was a good quote and pretty scary. So that wasn't in the book, in the short story.
No, that wasn't in the short story. Again, his whole backstory was made up. They do mention early on that he wrote a book back in the day, The Long Road Home, about his father, who Mr. Ola said sounded like a bastard.
So do you think there were any horror cliche moments in this movie? What do you think?
I think you know what I'm going to say. Based on what I've been talking about, I think the use of the dead child is a horror cliche. I think that's been used time and time again.
Oh, it's usually the other way. It's usually the dead parent.
Well, okay. Yeah.
So this was kind of novel.
Well, I don't know if I'd call it novel.
Name one other movie.
With a dead child?
Yeah. Name one. 1, 2, 3, go.
Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah, but like the very end. The Omen, he was like the devil. Little Damien. Like he was like a devil child.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to disagree with you there, because typically it's the protagonist has the dead parent, and that's why they are the way they are, and you root for them, right? This is like the opposite of that, because the daughter died.
Pet Cemetery.
Pet Cemetery.
Pet Cemetery.
Yeah.
Dead kid.
Dead kid. Dead kid. Dead cat.
Dead kid. Dead cat.
Yeah.
Dead everything.
A lot of things.
Yeah. The Ring. Okay, you're talking
now
about
I'm remembering
creepy.
them.
You're talking about creepy child, but I mean like the protagonist where they die.
Well, in the
It's
ring,
usually
they
the
die.
other way around.
Well,
Yeah,
she
the
was dead
ring.
in the ring.
She was dead in
came.
the ring.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some
was
era.
she?
Or was she?
Yeah.
Well, we'll save that for another day. All right. How's your whiskey? Mine's going down like really
Yeah,
slow.
I need another. So I think we're gonna have to for another.
All right. Are you ready for a toppy?
Yes, I am. 1 second, let me shake it. Cheers.
Cheers.
To sip number 2. Well,
sip.
multiple sips, but cocktail number 2.
To cocktail number 2. I technically didn't finish my first one, but yeah. So the next section I have is ripoffs. Okay, what did 1408 rip off? What ripped off it? So what do you think it ripped off anything? We talked about The Shining, right? I mean, that was Stephen King though. Like, did it rip it off, or was it just like Stephen King? Tortured writers, tortured writers who drink a lot, right? Like alcoholic, tortured writers with family issues, and they really like hotels.
Yeah.
Like,
and they just like big empty hotels. I mean, I think when he's walking to the room for the first time, clearly that is Shining-esque, right?
Yeah.
You got the red floors, you have the long hallways. I mean, that was clearly reminiscent of it. I wanted to ask to see if you noticed this. So when because this reminded me of another, when he's looking out the window and he's waving at himself and they're doing the same thing, that just really reminded me of Poltergeist.
oh yeah,
I couldn't stop thinking of Poltergeist with that little girl, and that same thing was happening. So
Wait.
to me, that reminded me of it.
I want to go back and say that was one of the scary. That was really scary because like all hope was lost.
Yes.
And then they zoom in and it's like not zoom in, but they show the light and it's his face. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of like showed that he was totally alone and losing his mind.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, that was creepy.
Yes.
This movie did that a lot of like giving some hope and then taking it away. It's like all in their head. Like that movie, The Descent, it was very similar in terms of they go kind of crazy. So we talked about potential movies that 1408 ripped off, but what ripped off it?
I was thinking about this one, and one of the ones that came to mind was that use of the video call. Again, we'll call it Zoom or FaceTime or anything.
Yeah.
But that was definitely done later in some fine, found footage movies, right?
Right.
I struggled to think of other ones, though. I was curious to hear what you thought.
I mean, a lot of the scary things, people died in hotel rooms, like The Innkeepers. And I know that's one of our favorite Ty West movies, but they had a similar type of situation where you didn't really see anything, but there was this like an ominous presence. So I think that one definitely. And then, do I need to play it one more time? The song.
Yeah, play it.
I need to play
hear
it
it one more time.
because I'm going to ask if it reminds you of anything. Yeah. Right. Just like yeah. So was this like the best use of like an old timey song in a horror movie? Because there's another one that I'm thinking of, and it did come out after, like 3 years after. So Insidious, when it's like tiptoe through the tulips and the record player, tiptoe through the tulips. I need to find that one. Yeah, we'll save that one for later. Like it had the same vibe where, like tiptoe through the tulips,
And that same kind of almost like it was underwater, right?
yeah,
The way
when it was like a record player.
Yes.
And it would just come on. That was like they had creepy kids in those ones. I'm surprised they didn't mention that.
Well, this one just, maybe it wasn't creepy enough.
And then I already mentioned Mothman Prophecies.
When did Mothman come out? I mean, it's one of my favorites, but I can't remember.
2002, so 5 years
2002.
before. So it actually, I think, did it first with the phone, right? The phone ringing in the middle of the night and everything's really quiet.
Yeah.
Like chapstick.
You and I talked about this. I think one of the creepiest things is dark room, phone ring in the middle of the night.
Yes, and it's always the middle of the night.
Always middle of the night. Although this one, I gotta say, it was really bright in that room, and they had that phone ring, and it was still unsettling.
But I think that like they made something really normal, like just like a hotel room that's bright, not middle of the night. They made something really normal seem scary, which is even worse. Okay. I know I said the scary parts was my favorite segment, but I'm really excited about this next segment, alternate endings, because this movie has some. And it was just very, very cool because depending when you watched it, you could have gotten a different ending. And that's what happened.
And where you watched it.
And where you watched it. Yeah. So how many endings do you think this movie has? And not everybody knows how many and what they entail.
I saw two. I saw one in the theater and then one when I watched it at home.
So there are 4 There are four alternate endings. Yes. Yes. There are four alternate endings. There are two where he lives and two where he dies. And
Two where he died. Okay, I saw one where he lived and one where he died.
yeah. So what was the one you saw?
That he set it on fire and got out.
He got out and then he went back. Was he with his wife?
Yes, and he was listening to tape, and he was listening to a tape recorder, and they heard the dead child's voice on
The dead child's voice. So it all actually happened. So there's that ending, and then there's another one. It's the same ending, but the wife doesn't hear it. So it's just like a very subtle change where the wife doesn't hear it. And he just kind of looks really out of it and kind of looks over at her, but he doesn't say anything, almost as to not. He's like vindicated because he knows that what he experienced was real, but he doesn't like bother his wife with it. Or maybe she didn't want to hear it. I don't know. So there's that one. And then there's two where he dies. So the one I saw, and mine was like probably the most boring and disappointing because he sets himself on fire. He dies. You know, Samuel L.
theater.
Yeah, Samuel L. Jackson. I think he does this in all of them. He's like, good job, Mr. Enslin. Or I don't know what he says, but he says something, and he's now drinking whiskey down in
Olin, Mr. Olin, Samuel Jackson's character, because he dies to save the room, right, or to kill or destroy the room, right?
Yeah, whatever you think, the evil room. And then it goes to his funeral. There's like a funeral scene, and his wife is there, and the Samuel L. Jackson, Mr. Olin, tries to give his wife his like ashes, his burned ashes, but they would have also included like ashes from the room, and she doesn't want it. And then he goes back, and he now has the recorder. He has the box of his things, and he has the recorder, and he turns it on, and he hears what he's saying, and he hears the daughter. But then there's like a jump scare. It ends with a jump scare. He like looks up. This is spoiler alert, but again, if you're listening to this, the movie came out in 2007.
Yeah,
so
I think it's okay.
Like this is one of the endings. So he hears the daughter's voice, and then he looks up in the rearview mirror, and there's a jump scare. It's like charred John Cusack just kind of in the back seat. It's really weird. And then the movie ends. Yeah, it was. I mean, I did like jump, but it's just him all like burned. So that's the one I saw. But then it goes back to the room, and it's like the ghost of John Cusack in the charred room smoking a cigarette. And then you hear the daughter's voice, and he says, "Coming," and he like goes to be with her.
With his dead daughter.
Yeah. So then there's one more. Did you see the other one? The one where there's another one where he dies, and the wife is like so many endings. It's so crazy.
Have we not been at 4 yet? Are we still not at 4?
No, that's 3. There's one more. There's one more where he dies, and then the wife's cleaning out his desk in New York with the editor, who's that guy that's in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. He's like the father.
He also played Monk. Yeah,
he played Monk. Oh yeah, so that guy, he's great. His name is escaping me, but
Tony
he's awesome.
Shalhoub.
Tony Shalhoub. Thank you. Yes, Tony Shalhoub. And he's there, and then the wife leaves, and then Tony sits down. His character sits down at his desk, and he gets this package, and he opens it. So this is where I want to discuss it. So he opens it, and it's the 1408 screenplay, and he like reads it like cover to cover, and they have all these like voiceovers of things from the short story. I've been told, even though I didn't read it. But he died, so I'm like, what? I don't understand that one.
And that one, where he got out and wrote the book was real then.
Oh, maybe that's what that was supposed to be. Yeah.
Because he wrote the book, right?
Oh, you're right. Yes. So it was like different timelines or something. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Oh, I like that ending. Yeah. I did not see that one.
Thank you for reminding me that, because that's why he was at the post office to send the book.
Right.
So in this one, he gets it to him.
So he did get out. But then he got put back in. Oh, that's a brilliant ending.
Yeah. But that one isn't. It was only on like the director's, like the DVD or something apparently. But yeah. So those are the 4 endings. Which one did you like? The one you got? Which one do you think?
I got the happy ending, right, where he got out. So I guess so. Although now that I heard the one where he. Who was it? Samuel L. Jackson opens the book, or the editor opens the book?
The editor opens the book.
Yeah, I think I would have preferred that one. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah. I guess there's less, like, it doesn't really make sense because the whole room was supposed to be in his mind. But, you know, this suggests that there's something else happening here, like different dimensions or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, looking at I did a little deep dive on Reddit, but I also thought this too, like, did he just die in the beginning? after the surf accident.
People think this. People think this. And what, it was purgatory effectively?
Yeah, because it was like it was psychological torment, and it was all based on things in his life with his father and things he was insecure about, and his daughter. So this was just like a hell tormenting him for like eternity, right? It was 60 minutes and it kept going. So the only way out was to finish the job. So that's one interpretation. But who do you think the villain was in the movie? Who was the villain? Who was the protagonist? Who are you supposed to root for? Who was the villain? Because the audience, I mean, the script definitely, the movie anyhow, makes you get behind Mike Enslin. Like, even though he's, kind of snooty and like just doesn't care about anything, they give you, at least the one I saw, they give you that backstory, and you kind of care about him, and you want him to, what's coming, right? But you want him to kind of prove it wrong anyhow. So who do you think was he the villain? Was someone else the villain? An argument could be made that other people in the movie were the actual villain as well. Do we think that Samuel L. Jackson's character was the villain?
No,
because I keep going back to he gave him the whiskey. Like he gave him the whiskey, so you could also think that maybe he was hallucinating the whole time.
Right. And he talked about that in it, right? Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a literal sense to take this, right? The villain was the evil spirit or whatever it was in the room, and the room. Yeah. But I never thought that Mr. Olin's character was the villain in this. No. So if anything, I think Enslin, right? I mean, he defied all of the good judgment, and he still went in the room, so he got what he wished for in a way.
What about the wife? Is there any, any scenario where the wife was the villain? The little girl, for that matter. I mean,
maybe the little girl. The little girl was trying to, her little ghost figure was trying to keep him in that room.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any scenario where the wife is the villain. Unless I'm
just thinking outside the box. Like, maybe, like, she got there really quickly. Like, she knew where it was.
Okay, let's talk about this. We do not know who sent the postcard.
We do not know.
If the wife sent the postcard and wanted him in New York and sent him there. So you know what? Let me say that I think the villain is whoever sent that postcard.
Yep. And will we ever know? That's why we need a sequel. We need to know who sent it.
We need a sequel.
Maybe we need a prequel. We need a prequel. And it has to end. It has to end with someone writing, "Don't go into 1408," and then you zoom back and like we finally know who the villain was.
I think that's goddamn brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just
okay. Well, who do you think wrote the postcard?
I think it was Mr. Olin. I think he was the villain.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was him. Just the way he like egged him on and like used all that. You don't want to go in there and telling him all the details, like knowing he did his research on him and knew that he would want to go up there.
Okay.
I just think like saying the room was evil. I'm like, I don't know. I think he was in cahoots with the room, right? Because it was similar to like The Shining, like how it like made people crazy when they went there. So that's what I think. Well, I think Sam Jackson might have been the actual
Mr. Olin. He was one of the only other characters. There were, I think, 3 characters in the actual short story. Okay, now that we're on the topic, what if it's the editor? What if the editor wanted a good story? He sent it.
Oh my goodness, I love that.
Yeah, I haven't came up with that right now.
I'm thinking about this for the first time.
We're talking about villains. Yeah. I think the whiskey's helping me think about potential villains here. Yeah. He was writing 10 haunted hotels.
Yeah.
He had visited a few. He wanted better content.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so we already talked about prequels. Sequels. Could they make a sequel? What kind of plot do you think that they could have? So the one that I saw recently, the ending is he lives and they hear the daughter. But he still wrote the book. So I had this idea of, he writes the book. It's like a bestseller and he kind of becomes famous again because he was kind of down on his luck. Right. So then he gets this stalker that is obsessed with him and then knocks him out. And then he wakes up and where is he? Where do you think he is?
I think he's back in 1408.
He's in 1408. Yeah.
So replica of 1408.
Yeah. Yeah. In like a bunker or something, like Saw. So that could be, I feel like that could be a sequel. Maybe it's a shared universe.
Reminds me of another movie.
Saw.
Reminds me of something else.
Saw.
They woke up back in the room.
I feel like that happened in Saw. But it could happen in 1408 too.
Yeah, I love that.
But it should be called 1409. All right, Allie, well, that's going to do it for our first inaugural episode of Sips and Screams. I've had a lot of fun sipping, talking about the screams, all of the things. So join us next time as we sip themed cocktails. Who knows what it's going to be next time? And discuss the good, the bad, and the terrifying of our favorite horror movies. Until then, cheers. And fears? We should change the name. Damn it. Something to think about.